Hello and welcome to John and James Live. My name is John Hastings and with my co-host, Mr. James Silo. And today, James, we're going to be talking about religion versus science, science versus religion. I came to you and I said, James, I think religion is on the comeback, and you wasn't quite sure about that, was you? Because it's maybe been on the downturn for a couple of decades now. So we'll start by saying, how are you, James?
I'm good. I'm good. We don't shy away from weighty topics, do we?
No, we don't, do we? And I get that feeling sometimes because you're not as on the internet as much as me, are you? You're more of a, what do they call it? A naturalist. Would that be the word?
Or a naturist?
A naturist.
Yeah, that's something.
You're more outdoorsy, I
Might
would
be something
say.
a little different. Yeah, no, I'm wearing my crack hoppers today, so yeah, that just highlights the fact that I'm an outdoors kind of guy, whereas you seem to be stuck to your screen, mate,
I
on a
think so.
regular
I'm
basis.
always on the net. So I get in a feel of what's going on in the world. And at the moment, I'm feeling like there's this transition back towards religion. And I'm seeing it with people like Russell Brand. I don't know if you know Russell Brand, the comedian. He's a born again Christian. He's back into Jesus. I've seen a lot of the conservative types that are very Christian orientated. Then I
Mm.
went on that march, the freedom of speech march. Again, that was all of a sudden very religious, which was a bit of a surprise. And I guess there's that sort of angst between Muslims, Christians, and the whole immigration thing. And maybe the whole religion thing is coming back up again. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I can completely understand it, and I think whenever there's periods of unrest in the world,
Yeah,
that people want to make sense of it, and religion has been around for millennia. And I guess it's an anchor for people, isn't it? To enable them to make sense of what's going on. So, yeah, I completely understand it, but it can exacerbate already tenuous situations or contentious situations where people are feeling sort of polarized anyway, and then bring religion into the mix, and it can increase that sense of otherness because of differences of religion and opinion. So it's a fascinating subject, mate, 100%. And I've kind of dipped in and out of religion all my life, and majority of it's been forced on me, and made to be confirmed at about sort of 13 years old. And I did it to appease my mother. So it's something that she wanted me to do. So I kind of went along with it. I got baptized and had my confirmation, got given a large candle, had to go through a series of classes and a ceremony and all that sort of thing, but never really understood why I was doing it. And as I said, did it for reasons that weren't my own. And at school as well, made to go to church on a Sunday. So it was a naval school that I went to, so very much centered around religion. So every Sunday we went to church, and then after that it was parade. So as soon as I reached the sort of the sixth form, lower sixth and upper sixth, I didn't go. But
Did
people
you
would be
understand
there.
what you was learning, James, at that
No,
time? Did you?
no,
Was
no.
it
It was
just like
all
there's a God, there's a Jesus guy, and you're sort of following these principles or guidelines
yeah.
of life? Did you really understand what you was learning at that age?
No, and we did RE as well. Obviously, schools are still teaching RE, and
Yeah.
there's a level of me and there's a part of me that agrees with that, to create a sense of awareness and understanding, to be able to appreciate other religions. So I get it, but I what I don't really see is that that would need to be a long-term strategy, that you could do that in maybe a term and then kind of move on from that. So I never could really understand why that was, taught for years and years and years, RE, when, we could probably do with a bit more physical education.
But
So,
they would say we're a Christian country in the UK predominantly, and that's why the Christian faith is pushed within the schooling education system. I guess that's why people are feeling a little bit out of sorts as such when we have other religions coming to the forefront in terms of their maybe having more children. The religion is proliferating more in younger generations. So it does change the dynamics of a society, doesn't it? When a religious belief changes. So how important is it, James, to hold on to certain beliefs, or are they separate from values?
well, I think the two go hand in hand. And I think we've talked previously about what you grow up, the situation you grow up with, your environment, and how you, again, anchor yourself in terms of understanding the world. And it can become a handbook, a manual to live your life by. So completely understand, again, how it influences people's perception of the world and making sense of it. But I would just encourage a sense of curiosity, to not dismiss out of hand, but to try to understand or get some level of appreciation as to why people think the way they do, and not to hold on so tightly to your belief system that you completely discard any other perspective. And again, I've said it live on here before, is that at the point in which it sort of starts to get in the way of common sense, and common sense is an interesting term because that's again down to perception and perspective. But, if you're doing things that are at the detriment to others because of your belief system, then that kind of gets a bit tricky, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think because the difference between science and religion would be fundamentally that science is evolving to establish some type of objective truth through the process of the scientific method of testing something, seeing what the outcomes are, or forming a hypothesis, seeing what the outcomes are. Whereas religion is, in some sense, it's how you perceive some type of text, and it's not really, it's more of a fixed belief system, isn't it, James? I guess you're starting I believe, from a premise, and then you're already, you can't really evolve from it.
I mean, I think, obviously religion predates science and the scientific method and having definitive proof of something in terms of existence. So, times have changed, that we now have at our fingertips devices that can provide us with answers that have been proven in science and have been rigorously tested. And the methodology is there and the results are there for all to see. Whereas, religion came around at a time when you couldn't explain the world in any other way. So you had to come up with, again, some means of making sense of, why the sun rises in the morning and then the moon suddenly appears, and the seasons, and all of those sort of things that we have to be mindful of where this all originated from. So, but I also have a belief that there's things that science can't explain, that there's still an ethereal element to it, that things that happen in the world that you can't necessarily explain away. And you'll hear people talk about a greater good, an external force. They can't necessarily name it. And I have a level of belief in that of a higher power that exists, that there's certain things that you cannot explain away. And I don't know that the two can't coexist, that science and that particular aspect, there's certain things that you can't necessarily conveniently package up to say that is definitively the case.
100%. It's always evolving, isn't it, James? It's a very difficult one. Do you want to read this one out, James?
I'll read this one from Tulu.
Hey, Tulu, how are you?
Pronounced your name correctly. So the philosophy of René Descartes. Wow, here we go then, chaps. Here we go. Split the world into mind and matter.
Here we go.
Cartesian dualism had an unintended corrosive effect. It created a hierarchy where the abstract ideas, systems, data became more real and valuable than the tangible, lived human experience. This laid the groundwork for a world where an economic indicator like GDP is valued over communal well-being, or where an ideological doctrine is valued over human life. Absolutely begin to serve the system rather than having. Let's see if I can get the rest of that up. I can't get the rest of that up, so it's a little too detailed.
Is this more sort of? Yeah, I understand what Tulu's saying there. There's that feeling of like subjective experience over objective science is a differentiator. Then all of a sudden, if everything's done in terms of data and objectivity, you can go off of numbers like GDP, where it's not really, an indicator of social well-being as such. It can just be the movement of services within a certain system. So we can see that, I would say, religion and probably Christianity has dropped off over the last few decades. Would you say a lot less people were going to church?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be that way. Interestingly, though, enough, my youngest son, dare I say it, dabbled with Christianity. And again, completely understand the reasons why, because, he's trying to make sense of the world and have some grounding and something that allows him to make sort of decisions, again, sort of going back to that manual for life. I mean, as his father, have tried to instill into him growing up sort of values and a moral compass. But, there comes an age where you start to look for your own answers and question everything. And from his experience and the conversations we'd had around it, that seemingly the majority of people that he was going to church with were around his age. And he found his community. I mean, he was sort of in his early 20s. I think he's kind of less involved in it now, but certainly they were lads and lasses of his age that were going to it. And they had that sense of community and, fair play to it. Absolutely. Agree. And it just almost happened to take place within a church. It could have been a community center, it could have been a club, but it was in a religious building.
Do you think it's because of the youth are feeling more lost
probably,
than ever
probably
at the
decentered,
moment?
disenfranchised, lost, that there's no strong leadership that they can kind of turn to and potentially that they can relate to. And if there's other people that look a bit like him and are of a similar age that are engaging in this, then, it's going to be pretty attractive, isn't it? It's that kind of tribal element, the community side. So, and I think the church maybe has done a bit of a PR job and appealed to the youth, because it was always, certainly in my younger days, always seen as, particularly stuffy. There were people that I didn't relate to. They were always in their sort of 50s, 60s, and I'm there now. And, the clergy, depending on your perspective, clearly there's issues there with different sort of religions in terms of the people that are in positions of power. That's not necessarily something we're going to go into, but it was always perceived as people that were pious and that we couldn't relate to, we couldn't possibly hope to emulate, because they were seen to be up on that pulpit and beyond reproach. And it was a sort of dictatorial aspect of it, and your sort of damnation and hellfire and brimstone type sort of thing that I was subjected to.
Yeah.
And it didn't sit well with me. That whole threat of damnation just didn't do it for me.
So do you think I don't know within the church or within other religions whether they're evolving or not? You're seeing sort of gay priests and things like that in the Christian church. I know
women priests.
Women
ordained.
priests. I know a lot of got Muslim friends, and I know behind the scenes they're struggling with living in a Western country and having their parents be quite orthodox, and they're trying to be more open-minded, and there is that internal conflict between them both, I would say, in a lot of respects. So they say that they're Muslim, but they're not really following any of the Muslim doctrines, I would say, or Islamic doctrines. So is that the difficulty, James, in terms of keeping these things going? Because we say that we want community and we want connection, and society's losing these type of things, but you don't see hundreds of scientists gathering every Sunday to go and talk about personal development, do you? So is that, where's the, how do we sort of have that community and have that shared belief without religion?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just going through my head now of a conversation we had a little while ago about pubs and shutting down, and how sort of pubs were the center of a community. They were the hub that people would go, have a drink, have a conversation, be known, felt like they belonged. And with pubs closing down, or people not drinking like they used to drink, certainly alcohol consumption has gone down, cheap alcohol in supermarkets, COVID, all of those different kind of factors have decentralized everything. And maybe religion is taking over from that. I don't know, it's an interesting concept, isn't it? That this sort of shift, I think we're always seeking connection and meaning, and maybe, because religion has been there in whichever form for millennia, that it's a fairly easy thing to turn to, and there's going to be an establishment that you can join, whatever that looks like, whatever sort of ties in, whether it be, I kind of personally have leanings towards Buddhism, with meditation and that kind of, it seems just to be a more open, in my very basic understanding of the religion, being more understanding, open and tolerant, dare I say. So that appeals to my sensibilities. So I think
you wouldn't
where
consider
we are,
yourself a Buddhist, would you?
I wouldn't consider myself a Buddhist, but I can appreciate the teachings of Buddhism.
Would you consider yourself religious?
No, and certainly not in terms of the institution of the church, whatever institution that is. I struggle with. At the end of the day, a huge amount of good gets done in the name of religion, but there's also the other side, and the intolerance, and in the name of a particular religion, whatever that is, Again, when sort of common sense and hatred prevails, I can't square the circle on that any religion would have hatred as part of its teachings. And that if you don't believe my belief system, that entitles me then to, enact atrocities on you as a result. But it's, again, a polarizing aspect and has been used time and time again to mobilize a nation against another nation, or, even within nations, within communities, to drive a wedge because they don't have the same belief system.
Yeah,
for
that's
nefarious
true.
means, that religion starts to get sort of, used against a community because they don't look like they do, or they don't act in the same way, in which case there's then fear as a result. And fear can be an incredibly powerful tool to mobilize for whatever purpose, for whatever purpose.
Fear is a great control mechanism, isn't it, for people?
Yeah.
Chris says it's a false dichotomy. Many believe in both. Yeah, there's many scientists that do believe in both. Like James, who you were saying, there is, no matter what science you do or what results you produce, there's more unknowns than there is knowns, isn't there?
There's always anomalies.
We pretty much don't really know much, do we? To be honest, we're moving fast. Sort of the laws of physics, but again, they're going to evolve, and scientists are probably very open to all of their beliefs evolving over time. Whereas there are some diehard religious folk who are set in their ways. They will not evolve that belief. They have that belief system, and I find it. I'm like you. I'm sort of more open to different experiences and different beliefs, but maybe I'm losing something from being like that, James. Like I said, I don't go to church every weekend. Would that benefit me? Yeah, I probably could. It'd probably be quite good to go and meet with people every Sunday and have a shared belief. And every time I bump into religious people, whether it's Muslims or Christians, Hindus, whoever, I always, even the Jehovah's Witnesses that knock on my door, I always find them to be very polite, just very, they feel quite loving people, don't they?
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the level of belief that they have. This almost unquestioning belief that they're on the right path. And there's a part of me that's almost envious that they've come to something, to some moment, whatever that has looked like. When you hear about people that have had visions, or something that's happened in their lives that's convinced them of this path, and it's, like I said, it's an unwavering belief, and they're completely convinced that this is their calling. I'm endlessly fascinated by that.
Yeah, because whatever these prophets did, whether it's Jesus, Muhammad, or whoever, they've done something impactful, haven't they, James? Because we're still talking about it 2,000 years later. It's got to be the biggest marketing PR stunt ever in human history to do something in your life where people then create a calendar around you. It's pretty profound, isn't it? To think that it's still going. I know there's different sects in terms of the religion, whether it's Catholicism, Protestant, Gregorian. There's all types of different views, isn't there? You've got the Jewish religion. It is so vast, but it has kept, in terms of the grand scheme of the world and time, I probably say it's a very small fraction of time, isn't it? I guess.
And whilst we're all searching for some meaning, it will continue to exist.
Yeah.
Until everything has been answered. Yeah. Going back to science, until we have definitive answers for everything. And whilst we still, as a species, die, and trying to make sense of that and what comes after death, once this cerebral mass ceases to exist, what then? It's like, well, what is this? This is a whole sense of why we continue, why we get up in the morning and go about our daily lives. It's like, well, what's the point? Because at some juncture, we're going to die. We are going to cease to exist.
And then you think, is it better to believe than not to believe, even if it's not true? Does it help you, even if it's not, objectively true? Is it just better to believe? You're part of a community, you're following some rules, you potentially, there might be something after you die. It's a tricky one, isn't it? But in terms of sort of facilitating religion, have you ever prayed before, James? And if so, why?
I have.
And what was your experience?
So I've prayed many times, and it's always been about loved ones. And I don't think I've ever prayed for myself specifically, but if, somebody I love is going through something, they're an operation, or, they're traveling for a safe return, whatever, I have.
Who are you praying to?
Well, this is an interesting one, because whatever higher power, whatever ethereal thing, it's more to kind of that, but I have prayed to God. So this is this weird kind of dichotomy of not believing, but at times of stress, having something to hold on to and to go to as an entity, brings some level of hope and solace, when you kind of need it. So, there's a weird sort of jostling between the belief and the non-belief. But there's part of me that is just kind of releasing this thing into the ether. And it's almost an absolution of just externalizing this thing that's happening at that moment in time, and makes you feel like you are doing something when you feel powerless. I can't influence the outcomes of this particular thing, but I can at least externalize it in some way, shape, or form. So I have.
Did it feel better, or did it make any difference, do you think? Or is it just more like a superstition?
It's one of these things that the outcome was okay. It wasn't a bad outcome. But I don't know that my belief is restored or is increased because of that. But it just at that moment in time, in a time of high stress, having some tool to turn to just helped. Yeah,
I had a situation where I sort of said a prayer one night. It must have been, I've got it on my phone, a couple of years back. And I was just speaking to the ether. I don't know who I was speaking to, but just whoever's out there. I call it God. I'm baptized Catholic. I'm not really religious. I did like RE, went to Christ school, which was obviously a religious school, went to mass. So I'm from that type of background, but I'm not particularly religious. But I said a prayer, and then I was just saying, just send me a sign. Just any sign to that something out there was listening. Just prayed one night. So I woke up in the morning, and you just do your morning scroll on your phone. So I'm scrolling through. So I go onto Facebook. I'm not a massive Facebook user. Once you've got your 300 friends or whatever, you've got 10 from 10, 15 years ago, I don't know who uses it anymore, but I don't really use it that much. So I went on there and I had a friend request from somebody I didn't know. Never had a clue who they were. It was a guy. I've got his name on my phone, so I screenshot it. So I went onto his profile, and on his profile banner, it said, you are a disciple of Jesus. And it had the quote in the bottom right of a verse from the Bible, John 17.9.6 something. So obviously my name's John, and I'm thinking, wow, this is weird. This is very weird. So I sort of scrolled down the feed, and then it had a name of a lady, but the second name caught my attention because it was the same name as my grandparents. My grandparents had died like 20 years previous, and their name was Rothery. I've never heard anyone have that name before, so it's quite an unusual name. So I'm just like, okay, this is a bit weird. So I contacted him. I just said, hey, do we know each other? He just said no. I explained to him that, it must have sounded crazy, but I said to him, look, I said a prayer last night for the first time, asking for some type of sign. And then all of a sudden you've popped up. And he replied, he just said, sorry, can't help you. And then I think he blocked me after that. And that was and that was it. So
it's very weird, mate, isn't it?
But I
think
still
that's weird.
But then my logical brain is like, is it just coincidence? Does it mean that Jesus is talking to me, or is something out there in the ether just sent me a sign, because that would be an obvious sign?
So this prayer, was it in your head, or did you speak it out loud?
It was verbal and in my head.
So you were talking.
I was talking, yeah.
What does that say about the listening abilities of Facebook?
That's interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that, to be honest. But still wouldn't give you a friend. It wouldn't give you a friend request, would it?
Well, when you mention something and a advert pops up in your feed. Oh, that's a bit spooky, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be an avenue to explore, wouldn't it? To be honest,
Yeah.
whether it's picked up something.
Burst your bubble.
Yeah,
it's a great story, though, mate.
Yeah, you want to believe, don't you? There's something more. Logically, there's got to be, isn't it? Whether we're in a simulation or we're in something.
Is God on the socials? I mean, I don't know that I guess he's going to use whatever
means
available to him now. I guess he's moved with the times, right?
But is that statistically, you could say that can happen easily? It could be rare, even if it's 1 in 100 million.
Yeah,
but it's still possible.
Yeah.
Salute.
People using religion to control and dominate human doesn't make religion bad. It's a bit like guns aren't bad. It's the person that pulls the trigger.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Or how you interpret the information and use it.
Yeah. Makes them bad interpreters. So throughout history, spiritual frameworks designed to foster compassion, humility. It's been lost in translation, Tulu. I completely agree. I think fundamentally the principles are good.
Yeah.
To a lesser or greater extent, they've been interpreted in different ways. And again, it's open to interpretation of how you choose to enact it. But again, I just think it comes down to the doctrines that are there, and if they are counter to what your particular belief system determines, how it's been written down. And it's looking at these basically to say, in context of how it's been written and then taking it as read. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. It's that interpretation, and obviously it's a bit like Chinese whispers over. You can people can barely agree what somebody said last week on news.
Yeah.
How are you going to go back, 2,000 plus years and have one message that's completely consistent over thousands of years with, Latin translation, Roman, Greek translation into English? Even if you listen to the English language 500 to 1,000 years ago, you're not even going to understand it. It's going to be a Germanic type of weird language that you're just not going to get. Most people couldn't read.
Read a bit of Chaucer, that'll give you an idea.
Yeah.
So why are we having this conversation? What is it that you've seen, heard, read that's leading you to believe that religion is on the up?
I'm just seeing a lot more young people who are involving themselves in religion. I'm seeing a lot more celebrity type individuals, even with like Andrew Tate's saying that he's now converted to the Muslim faith. You've got the Russell Brand gone Christian. Everything's become very political at the moment, and underlying that sort of political belly, I would say, is a religious war underneath there. So the American conservatives, this Christian faith, the UK Christian faith, and it's sort of like a Christian versus Muslim thing underneath it, which I think can be very dangerous and unnecessary. And I think the more society becomes lost, because we're not really we're going to have to evolve our economic systems with this whole technological revolution, and people are looking for some type of meaning when their lives are not really improving. And especially in England, life is not improving at the moment. People we're less connected. The youth have got less hope about the future. People are having less children. There's less families. There's more divorce. There's more addiction because there's more junk food in the shops. There's more online porn. I just think there's so much disconnection in some avenues during this time of evolution that people are seeking some type of answers, and they're thinking, let's go back to some type of fundamental anchor that can help.
And when you look at the likes, so you mentioned Russell Brand and Andrew Tate. I mean, just as two examples of people that seemingly, you could argue, lost their way and have turned to religion, depending on your viewpoint, to say, and it could be a very jaundiced viewpoint to say, well, they're seeking absolution, or they've gone so far down one particular route that they're now using religion to show that they are changing that path, and that they are looking to resolve those kind of issues. I mean, who can say, because none of us are in their heads and nobody knows for sure. So again, it depends on the way you want to look at it, to sort of say, well, either, when the heat's on, that you say, well, I found religion, and then, well, that's okay. Look, they're doing the work. Or, genuinely they are rudderless and are seeking some form of guidance from, an ancient scripture, whatever that looks like. So I guess it does provide people with that anchor. And when you are lost, what are you going to turn to? What else is there that you can turn to that is going to give you that sense of self, community, as we've said, some level of meaning from a higher power, that I think is the kind of relinquishing and a letting go as well, of saying, look, it's in the hands of God, whoever your God is. that we are just vessels here on earth. And, you know, how much control do we have? And it's the relinquishing of that control, the letting go, and saying,
surrender,
you know, what will be, will be.
It reminds me of a lot of sport, because I watch quite a lot of sport as well, and you see like top sports people, and they always, you know, a lot of them at the top, they speak about their relationship with God, and they give thanks to God from where they're at. So they are sort of surrendering to their path and believing in this higher power of it's meant to be this way. It is, whether it's true or not objectively is a different thing, but whether that is helping them feel a certain way.
I mean, you could say superstition is very similar, isn't it? I mean, you'll know guys, sportsmen, I know guys that will wear a pair of pants before they go on the pitch. Or if they go for an interview, you know, lucky pants, lucky socks, whatever. And it just imbues them with a sense of, you know, that I am wearing or I'm doing something that's going to potentially affect the outcome of this. And it can be as little as something like that would just give you the edge. And it's, again, mentally, that you're in that headspace of going, I've got my lucky pants on. And I've done my affirmations, or I've whatever, and I've just got myself into this situation where I feel prepared. And it can be as simple as that.
Could be a placebo, couldn't it? The placebo could help.
Anything. But
could help.
You know, I think at the end of the day, if it enables you to act in a particular way that's beneficial to yourself and to others, then where's the harm in it?
Yeah, I'll give you a counter argument to that in a second, James.
Go for it.
Nancy
Nancy
says, wow, what a beautiful experience. No matter your religion, God is always listening. Things may get delayed, but there are always signs or other ways to protect you. John, sometimes things between you and God don't have to make logical sense. If Jesus is your God, then that feeling can't truly be explained to others because it's a personal conversation between you and him. Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, I definitely, the fact that it was a Jesus thing that come up, sort of, I'm not sure about it. I do feel a little bit uncomfortable when people say Christ is king and they have this such deep faith in Jesus. I feel a little bit uncomfortable when anybody comes to me with any sort of certainty, which may sound strange, but I see a level of certainty as a fear of the unknown and a way to protect yourself rather than just being okay with not knowing. That's my point of view. Nancy says, life is not improving because people are not taking real action to pursue what they want. As we discussed before, easy money has become something everyone is seeking. We need to put in the effort to escape the situation, but unfortunately our generation seems to be looking for something else instead.
What I would say, Nancy, as is always my want, is being mindful of categorizing everybody and having a perspective of saying that everyone is like that, that people aren't taking action. Well, you know, there are people that are taking action and doing things differently, but again, it's a perception of the world. And also being mindful of how the media at large is representing the populace. I think scratching beneath the surface is always advisable in these situations, to try not to generalize. And
there's a paradox of choice as well, isn't there, James? Maybe before, if your options were limited, that can actually be beneficial. When you've got infinite options to go in multiple directions, you sometimes you just don't know what to do or what to believe anymore.
Look, the human condition is imperfect. It's fallible. You know, we're all fundamentally flawed in lots of different ways.
You sound like Jesus.
Well, the beard's coming along.
Is that what you said?
Almost verbatim.
Yeah.
But I think
sinners.
Yeah, well, but generally, you know, we none of us can say anything with real certainty. And again, like I said before, anchoring yourself to an absolute is fundamentally tricky, because there aren't any absolutes. And
but
all
then
we
you're
can do is
overthrowing
just,
religion. You're overthrowing religion with that statement, James. Aren't you?
well, but all we can do, I think, is just be open-minded and curious. And we're constantly changing. We're in flux. We're in a state of flux from one day to the next, from 1 hour to the next, from a minute to the next.
Yeah.
But our views can change dependent on our lived experience. So something could happen today, tomorrow, that would change, and you would then be forever changed in a particular way. So, there's no definitive answer to any of this. And it will sound like you're sort of fence sitting, but at the end of the day, that is the human experience.
I did have a sort of a contradictory, not contradictory view, but a view on it with somebody I know who was a devout Christian. And she had a cousin who passed by suicide. But the religious teachings in that on that occasion would say that this person who passed by suicide is basically going to, in no uncertain terms, going to burn in hell. And then she's wrestling with this, this love for her cousin who was obviously in a bad place, and this religious doctrine of where that person is now. I haven't spoken to that person in a while, but sometimes when you have this type of belief system and you have that, that anchor of a definitive answer in what they're believing, it can be dangerous, can't it?
It makes me so sad. It just,
it's like
I think at someone's time of need, that's the perspective.
I'm not saying that, I don't know if that's the protocol for all religious,
but that happened at that moment in time, and that's all all that you can go on, and that's where it falls down. It's not it's not the generalist belief, or that would not be it just happened at that moment in time, and those things are always taking place.
Because you think like going to heaven or hell, and what is good or bad it's on a spectrum, isn't it, James? It's basically,
but again, when you you take a broad view of this, when you step back and think about what religion represents, there's an element of it. I'm not saying this is it's in its entirety, but it's a coercive control for society, that for people to love thy neighbor. And there's certain things, it's a series of protocols for the way that people can live their lives, to be good to each other, good human beings, be respectful, etc., etc. But again, it's that sort of fire and brimstone, fire and damnation, that fear-based, that if you don't live your life in this particular way, then you are going to hell. And there's no two ways about it.
It's an extreme, isn't it?
Waits you.
Yeah.
So it's it's a control mechanism.
That's what George is saying here, James. He says the problem with science and religion, this problem with science and religion is that both can be bought with enough wealth and power, and both have been heavily influenced by obsessive greed of the ruling class. Both are subject to the same rules of political correctness, and both have been consistently weaponized in the service of empire. And as such, neither will save civilization and mankind. Only the courage and unity to will the good on a large scale can do that. Yeah, that is the difficulty. That's what we talked about, George, isn't it? But
again, you've got these different sort of modalities. The fact that you've got, the human being, and you've got the belief system. And the belief system in itself is not inherently evil or bad. But it's, again, I go back to the fact that humans are by nature fallible. And, the interpretation of a particular religion taken for good or for bad is down to the individual or a collective. So we can't demonize religion, because at the end of the day, it's what you choose to do with it. The fundamentals are there.
Yeah.
And it was a human, again, depends on what you believe to be the case, is to say that it was either a group that got together and thought, we've got to do something here. Society is struggling. So we need to create a set of rules for society. Otherwise, we are going to destroy ourselves.
Anarchy.
And total anarchy.
Yeah.
So we need something now that people can get behind to galvanize and to stabilize society, because, we are looking at damnation.
Yeah. And there is a lot of non-religious folk, isn't there, James, out there? I guess, I don't know what the statistics are, but it's going to be probably the 1, 2, 3 billion, I would suggest, that are non-religious, and they're not all living in anarchy, are they, in terms of non-religious folk? So, there is, you can do both, can't you? You can be non-religious and live very morally with a spiritual feeling of there's something beyond this realm. Or you could go down the path of being heavily religious. When you do the one, I would say I'm in that box of being probably spiritual, non-religious. I would say you don't really get the benefits of the community and the structure. So there's downsides to it.
It's interesting that there haven't been more religions that have been created. I mean, you've got Scientology. Scientology, that's it.
That is huge. The building in central London, this must have cost 100 million or something. It's huge. So, Jehovah's Witness, I don't know how old that is, but again, they've got controversial beliefs. Like, don't believe in blood transfusions and stuff like that. So if a kid needs it, they'll refuse it. And you think to yourself, is it common sense?
The will of God, what will be, will be.
Yeah. Then other religions are just against, gay people, and they think it's like the devil or something like that. But you think, would people actually choose to be gay and make their lives hard for no reason? It would
not
be
a choice.
It's not really logical, is it?
Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
And then you'll benefit from so much contribution that gay individuals like Alan Turing and others have contributed to society. So it can become quite hypocritical, can't it, James, on that side?
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy. I just thought I'd pop that up there.
Go for it, James.
We're all vessels, aren't we? Once we understand this concept, we won't seek out poor options. Instead, we can choose one path and let go of the things we cannot control. Not generalizing. James, is just my perspective. Absolutely. We are all entitled to our perspective, Nancy. The people who work incredibly hard, but when I think about my goal of providing employment to as many people as possible, I recall something one of the leaders said, Nancy, have you ever considered, my camera's in the way, whether these people actually want you? Why we can't get all of the comment up here? Is this just mine? Or is it yours as well?
I think it cuts off.
Yeah, they must have a limit.
Over a certain point.
George says, interesting conversations, but the term interpreted has been misinterpreted. Yes, mankind has always sought to understand the world we inhabit, if not with facts, then with imagination. understanding and making sense of things, and frequently justifying their own actions, for want of a better term, reduces the stress of uncertainty and cognitive dissonance.
I agree with that. I'm just interested for the people out there, are any of you religious? What religion do you follow? Or are you non-religious? I would be interested to know on that side. So for your son, James, are you encouraging this religious path, or are you just letting them flow in a direction of exploration?
Look, I said to my eldest son at the weekend, it's like, I'm very low maintenance. I just want them to be happy. And it doesn't matter, what that looks like. If it is religion, if it's, whatever, I mean, within reason, as long as, again, it's not harming anybody else, that makes them happy. I just fundamentally want them to be happy and fulfilled human beings. So if religion is that for him, absolutely, 100%.
What's your gut feeling on the future of religion and science? For me, James, I would say I can see religion growing in the next 10, 20 years and being something that people anchor in when there is a lot of disruption in society. I think people are going to feel quite lost, alone, isolated, and that's going to give them some type of support or connection to others. Long term, personally, I definitely believe there's something beyond this experience, but I'd probably say that I'm agnostic, so as I have no idea what that is. I like to follow a moral framework, but I cannot see the level of certainty in any religion being a long-term practice, as in 5 to 10,000 years, 10 to 20,000 years. I think we're going to evolve and understand that belief system a lot more.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it does pan out, and with the likes of ChatGPT and the Internet of Things as it stands, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0 to 5.0, whatever it looks like. And is there going to be more certainty as a result? And these things I believe are cyclical as well, that I think that they're going to come in and out of fashion, that it's going to be there when required. But I would say the majority of the time when it becomes particularly popular is around times of fear and disorder, and when you're unsettled, that it again becomes an anchor. Whatever that sort of religion looks like for you, that belief system. So I don't know that's going away anytime soon.
No, I don't think soon, like in the next 50, 100 years. I can't see it being a long-term.
But it's what consciousness is going to look like, though, mate. It's like where we're going to be in terms of an entity, and the requirement for things like that. I don't know. I can't even begin to imagine what we are going to look like as human beings in 100 years' time. You think about how fast things are developing in terms of that kind of hybrid model, hybrid mind, hive mind, that potentially we could all be connected, and what that's going to look like, when you can then suddenly, within milliseconds, have that information at your fingertips. Directly into the brain here, without, this kind of barrier that we're in at the moment, where even a sort of, a phone won't be required. That just a consciousness will be streaming in, and you're processing all of that information, where religion is going to fit into that.
I can't see young people go into the churches I've been to in England, James, listening to these slow sort of sermons, and the singing, it feels like a bit of drudgery to me. It feels a little bit cultish. Not saying it is, but I can't see that being appealing for a younger generation. Maybe for a sect of generation it could be, but and again with the Muslim Islamic faith, I really like that they do that prayer, whatever, 5 times a day. You know, it's a centering, isn't it? And they do it together.
I mean, it is like anything, routine. I think, I
Routine,
meditate in the morning, and that anchors me to the day. That just sets me up. And I know that if I've done that, then, I've got a better chance of making a decent kind of bid for the day.
If 100 of you was doing it together, James, I reckon it would add to the...
Well, imagine the vibrations.
The vibes. I think it would add to the vibes.
So Nancy says she comes from the Sikh faith.
I come from the Sikh faith, and I definitely follow its teachings. However, I strongly oppose extremism and violence in the name of religion, as well as actions that go against the law, even if they come from my own community.
See, it's so convenient, isn't it, just to lump everything in together to say, well, that is your faith and those are your belief systems. And it just isn't true. It just isn't true.
Toulouse says, this is not a battle between religion and science. While science is a powerful tool for understanding how, it is a silence on the why. It can tell us how to split an atom, but not whether we should. We need moral values that are not for sale.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it is still being discussed in a form that there is a competition. I think, Toulouse, if we go back to people like Galileo, he was put on house arrest, wasn't he, for saying that the Earth was no longer
it was
flat.
Blasphemy.
So this was part of religion saying that this was not good, or women were burned at the stake for being witches because for certain reasons, whether they was following paganism and things like that. There's a lot of prosecution that has gone on in the name of religion, and some of it doesn't fit science, does it? When you find out something they've said in the Bible.
It's fear-based, and like I said, it was a way of making sense of the world, that all of a sudden you say that the world is round instead of flat. And there's still the Flat Earth Society that will argue to their dying breath that the Earth is flat. That the implications of that, the fear, and everything you know to be true or think you know to be true is suddenly being challenged, and it's too much to handle, and because it's one person. And you imagine, though, being that person, putting yourself out to contravene what society as a whole believes by saying, look, scientifically, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we're not the center of the Earth's not the center of the universe. They're thinking you're questioning God, you're questioning everything we believe in. You must, we've got to shut you down.
You're
so
insane.
I understand what Toulouse's saying, but it does have, does religion and science, does it? It doesn't have to be a competition, but they do overlap and do affect each other, especially when moral frameworks might be slightly different in each religion and in each interpretation. So it can be quite difficult to reconcile both. Very difficult.
Yeah.
But it's a complex subject. But I just get the feeling that let's just note it down, James. I reckon this is going to become a big topic, and I reckon we're just early on that wave. And I reckon you're going to see other people in society, famous faces, coming out talking about Jesus more, or talking about their Muslim faith more. And it's just, I can feel the momentum building at the moment.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it's
to watch.
It is a fascinating subject, and I mean, I find myself. Again, none of us are perfect. As soon as somebody comes out and starts talking about their belief in God, I kind of switch off. It causes this sort of visceral thing in me, and that's my lived experience. You know, this is just me. That and there's I wouldn't say there's a level of disappointment, but I'm sort of, and I will challenge myself on that to be more open and listen to the, you know, to the conversation without making a snap judgment and saying, oh, you know, that's, they believe in God, and that kind of changes my perception. I mean, again, that, you know, Russell Brand, he sort of went through, I think it was a kind of it wasn't just like a come to Jesus moment. I think he sort of dabbled with other, I think there was sort of some Hinduism and Buddhism, and, you know, got a series of sort of tattoos, and had, you know, the different symbols, religious symbols tattooed. And I think Christianity sort of almost arrived at towards the end of this, not saying that he's at the end of the journey, but it was kind of a latter point from what I could see. But I think even before the controversy, he was starting on that path, and then it was sort of, you know, ramped up, seemingly. So yeah, it's interesting, mate. Really interesting.
Last one's on Salu. I'm sorry to watch this huge confusion and heavy burden in many of my environments and my Western friends. Love is a form of data that requires an internal journey with a pure mind. Rumi is not a poet. He is a human being who reached this maturity. I was raw, I became cooked, I was burnt. Universe contains knowledge, forms beyond mind, where we can only reach with a clear mind. So, Lou, I'm open to experience. I just, I'm not, I don't know, maybe it's a problem with me. I'm just not keen on certainty, but maybe that is what faith is, isn't it? Just believing in something, even if you got no evidence.
Yeah. And she says, yeah, I will repeat, people using religion to control and dominate humans doesn't make religion bad.
Yeah.
Like I said, religion is not the issue. It's the interpretation by the human being.
Yeah. And I don't know enough about each religion. There must be religious text and doctrine that's probably not conducive with modern views and living. So whether you say it's good or bad is, you know, a subjective opinion, but I reckon there's a lot of doctrine which is not conducive with modern living and understanding. So whether you say that's part of the religion, it's the text, or it's the ethos and framework behind it, it just depends how you interpret it. And if you believe that your God is, you know, correct and yours is the right one, and maybe Jesus is for you or Muhammad is for you, what does that mean for other people who don't believe in what you believe? Does that mean that they're wrong, or you're both right?
Love should be the only religion, really, shouldn't it? At its fundamental, that love should be the watchword.
Yeah, it seems that that's what we're sort of expanding into, some heightened consciousness. It seems that way, doesn't it? We're evolving our moral frameworks. You know, how barbaric things were before. I know that they're still not great today, but it seems like we are evolving. Yeah. It may seem slow, but it's just
and again, you know, when you look at it as a whole, again, putting some perspective on it, that it is the minority, not the majority.
Yeah.
You know, humanity is fundamentally, I believe, and I have to believe this, is good. And there are the minority, these factions that are very troubled individuals that want to cause harm.
Yep. And people at the top can sway the masses. They have the dark triad personality types, don't they? Machiavellism, psychopathy, and narcissism. A lot of people in power that are quite high level traits in those in the dark triad. So
you have to wonder how these people rise to the echelons of power, and unfortunately, I think those are definitely factors, aren't they?
Yeah, because you speak to people in the armies and they don't really understand what's going on a political level. They're there to do a job, really. It's not personal. You know, you had that in, was it World War I or II, when they started playing football with each other on the battlefield when it breaks. So they don't really hate each other. Horrendous. They're just they're following orders from
that ceasefire. I think it was Christmas Day, wasn't it? They had a ceasefire and played football.
Yeah, it shows you just a few people are dictating to millions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an open conversation, James, and let's see if this evolves, because I think it's going to be big.
Watch this.
Okay, guys, thank you for turning up. Thank you to Tolu. Thank you to Nancy. Appreciate that, George. Who else was on? Chris. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Today. Cheers, guys. Big subject, and share your thoughts in the comment section. Okay, James, take care, man.
Much love, everybody.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.